I'm Lauren, I'm an alcoholic. Congratulations to the celebrants. I love when we have a year celebrant, that's amazing. Steve, I always love when you share. And Ken is really one of the reasons I am a member of this home group, because Ken set it up so that this home group did it the right way according to Lauren, which is when you see a newcomer or a new face come in the door, you identify someone to go say hi and introduce yourself, and this home group's really good about that, or we try to be. So Ken got Liz, who, this was in 2018, Liz was not the same person back then. You were so shy. But Ken was like, Liz, go talk to this, and I could see it, because I had like a lot of time sober or whatever, so I was like scoping everything out, so I could see Ken like tap shy Liz to go talk to me, and I could see it like Liz had to work through something to come do that, and she did it. And I was like, yes, this home group does it right, you know what I mean, which is to welcome the newcomer, and so that's why I kept coming to this home group, and I try to carry that on. I'm gonna try to say what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I was born November 16th, 1985. I got sober August 3rd, 2005. And during that time period, I don't think anything in particular like makes anyone an alcoholic, except that like I had a family for whom alcohol as a solution to heartache and physical pain, it was that. It was also a grand accompaniment to celebration. Like it fit in every situation. So I definitely had that. There's a lot of alcoholism in my family, but you know, my parents are married. I never wanted for anything. I went to private schools growing up. Like I had all the good things. And I also would get like a glass of champagne on my birthday in 4th grade. So I don't know, you know, like my parents lived in Europe during the 80s, and so they had like a different idea about alcohol on a 4th grader's birthday. So I don't think that's what made me an alcoholic, but like I definitely didn't grow up thinking like, beware, alcohol might be problematic, you know? It was a solution that was demonstrated to me. In high school, I probably had a bit of depression. I had some experiences that were traumatic, and I think all of those things came together to really lock in like the alcohol is a solution thing. I consider my first alcoholic drink to be actually right before my freshman year of high school. I got in trouble for like piercing my ear at soccer camp, stupid, just like who cares? But I was basically grounded like the whole summer. And my parents had like a forgotten Beefeater's gin bottle in the basement, and I just like mixed that with a little bit of water, watched a documentary film, and I didn't get drunk, but it took away the loneliness, and it just like made me not care that much. It worked. And so a lot of alcohol for me was like taking away the loneliness. So whatever, high school's boring. I was like a high school kid. I partied a lot, but I could sense at that time still like my partying feels a little different and driven in a way that it doesn't for other folks. And by the time I was a senior, I was doing things like driving with Jack Daniels between my legs at night, like, and blacking out fairly regularly. So that's like obviously not normal for a 17 or 18-year-old person. But I also didn't think anything of it. This is where like I started to turn the corner in the alcoholism. Like, yes, I would have drinks when I was younger, that was allowed, but some people say like I was off to the races, I could tell. That wasn't me. Like there was some point where a switch was flipped and alcoholism like really took hold on me, where I started to have the experience like when I put it in my body, I'm not sure what's gonna happen next. That to me is one definition of alcoholism. Like sometimes it's totally fine, sometimes I'm gonna black out and like drive my car and not know how I got someplace. Like that's a pretty big gamble for me, for a person who's gonna drink. I'll also say there are other substances in my story, which I am gonna talk about because I would not have landed in AA if those things weren't on board. And so it's an important part of like, I think I probably, I mean, who knows? Like, I think ultimately I would have ended up dead with just alcohol anyway, but I wouldn't have been intervened on in a very long time because we were very permissive in my family about alcohol. Like, and I'll tell that about in my story later. So whatever. Things started to like, blacking out by the time I was 18 was pretty regular. I was smoking weed a lot. Breaking the law. Basically, there was like not a moment that I was not breaking the law a lot of the time because I was underage drinking to begin with. And I had all this externalizing, like, it's my family. Please keep in mind that I was a teenager, but I had thoughts like, my home is a haven of negativity, and that's why I do this, you know what I mean? If I just leave, then that'll be fine. So I like barely managed. I was actually a really good student. This is where the double life thing also started to develop. I got really good about looking good on paper, but inside it was like a total mess, right? So it's like, got good grades, I was doing theater, you know, I had lots of friends, whatever. But then I would be like blacked out on the weekends and drunk driving and stuff like that. But I was able to like keep it together enough that it never like, it looked like I was kind of doing okay. I was doing sort of this up and down thing. So I went to college and I was like, I have arrived. This will be the solution. Like, I'm out of the haven of negativity. My parents are off my back. Now I can do whatever I want. And of course we know where that goes. Like, I still was really committed to making sure that things look good on paper. So one of the things that I did as an example is like, I would be very hungover, but I would never miss class. I would just like go to class and then run out to throw up a bunch. But I never missed class, and that's the thing I would tell you, you know, like I never missed class. I couldn't possibly be. The idea that I might be an alcoholic was nowhere on my radar, because in college, like my drinking looked like everybody else. In my family, it looked like everybody else. So there was no like, I wonder if I have a problem here. It was like, this is how people do this. And I'll stand by that. Like it looked like a lot of people around me. Again, inside, I think it felt a little different. And that started to become more clear as my freshman year of college went on. Blah, blah, blah. It got worse. I started to feel worse about myself. The floor was dropping. Like the people, I was like hanging out with a pretty cool crew at first. And then like my behavior started to be weird in there, so I started to hang out with people who were even more unsavory. What that brought about was like different kinds of drugs that were also not very cool, especially when you mix them with alcohol. Like, this is the other thing that alcoholism really, the big book talks about, like it's not just a drinking problem, it's a thinking problem. Like I fancied myself a pretty smart young person, just ask me, you know? And I would know that like mixing things would 100% lead to blackout, but I would do them anyway, like knowing that I had to drive or knowing that I had to drive my friends. Like I was also very prideful about being like the best designated drunk driver, right? Like I trusted myself drunk driving more than I trusted anybody else driving sober, you know? Like, so that kind of pridefulness was there. Towards the end, I was in a relationship that was really bad. My emotionality wasn't that great. I still had a job. I still had a good grade point average. This is the stuff I would have told you. But I have in a journal that I wrote about, like I wrote in there right before I got sober, like I'm feeling like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So when I read that in the big book, I was like, holy shit. Like, it's like someone was over my shoulder, like talking about my experience. So anyway, the way that I ended up in being introduced to AA, again, like alcoholism, not on my radar. I thought probably I was depressed. I felt like something was wrong with me. I thought it was like depression or something. But I stayed at my college over the summer so that I wouldn't have to return home and took classes and like worked, but mostly just drank and got messed up. And I had to come home for the 2 weeks between the semesters. And normally I would like smoke a drink on the way home, but I didn't have any of that. I had pills and I had some tequila. And I also always used to joke like, I don't have my tequila story, tequila doesn't have me. And then I like went out really hard on tequila on this last story. But I snorted some pills for this 4-hour drive because I could not possibly like drive 4 hours sitting on with myself. Like that was not something that I did on long drives. So that didn't really work. So I had some tequila in my trunk and I drank some tequila. Not that much, but again, like I know Mike's face is like, oh girl, like gross. I know what that's gonna lead to, but it's like that thinking part is gone, right? Like alcoholism is totally in the driver's seat, and obviously I blacked out. So I was driving blacked out at like 2 p.m. in the afternoon between Charlotte, North Carolina. I was in school in North Carolina. Between Charlotte, North Carolina and North Georgia, I don't remember a thing. And I got pulled over, thank God. Now, thank God, then it was like the worst day of my life. I had a bunch of pills in the car with me because I had a fancy idea one of my friends was gonna get kicked out because of drugs, blah, blah, blah. I was gonna sell pills on this break. It was crazy. I was not that kind of person, but anyway, I had all these pills in the car. So I landed in jail, drunk driving, and with a bunch of felonies because of these pills. So that was like, whoo, on paper, that does not look good, you know what I mean? And I was sitting in jail and had to grapple with like, I am a student, has a job, has a boyfriend, has friends at this private school, and then it's like, no, you are like a 4-time felon in the afternoon, drunk driving in a blackout, sitting with all these people in here. Like, this is who you are, lady. Like, this is who you are. You are not this like grade point average, blah, 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 whoever you think you are. So I was really grappling with ego in that moment. And I had the thought, like, there is alcoholism in my family. The results of which are like varied, but we did have one uncle, Uncle Dan, you have an Uncle Dan too probably, who also had been in jail for some very not cool things. And I was like, great, it's me and Uncle Dan. Like, that's the guy that I am most like in my family. Very awesome. So while I was in jail, my family had me assessed and to go to treatment. So they assessed me. I don't know what happened in that assessment, but they determined that I just needed intensive outpatient, which is like nighttime treatment, you know? I think it's because I wasn't detoxing. So here's the other things, like, in terms of a bottom, like, I know for some people in this room, like, you went to jail and got those felonies, like, that bottom is out of control. But I'm like, I don't know, I was still in school, I still had a lot of stuff as far as I was concerned, which I'll stand by. Like, I still had a lot of stuff. So, but I wasn't physically addicted, like I wasn't detoxing or any of that kind of stuff. So I think they were like, she'll be all right with IOP or whatever. So I would go in the evening to like Ridgeview, basically sit frozen at my house all day long. I didn't know what to do with myself, and I was so frightened. It was like, if I breathe, I'm gonna like mess something up or whatever, which is like probably one of the reasons I drank. But like, I was so frightened about my behavior, my actions, like I didn't want to do anything. So I would sit frozen in my house all day, and then I'd go to this IOP and cry all night. And they were like, okay. So, and I wasn't really making progress. I think they thought I was being defiant. I was supposed to like go to meetings during the day or whatever, but I didn't know what they were talking about. Like, I didn't get why that was important. And when they were like, why didn't you go? I'd be like, I don't know. Like, I don't know why I didn't go. Like, what, are you mad at me? I'm not sure. I didn't know what was going on. So anyway, they were like, we think you need to go to inpatient. I went to inpatient at the young adult unit up there. That was really good. I felt safe. I love group therapy. Like, and honestly, it was the first place where like people talked about their feelings and talked vulnerably and openly. And I really liked that. That was not something that happened in my family. It was definitely something that I needed. And I was able to really explore like myself for the first time and get feedback from other people or whatever. Now, I really liked Frank told his story last month, and Frank led off saying like, I did not plan to stay here. That is also my experience. It was not my plan to stay in AA. I was like, I will do this thing while I have this court case open, because I was out on probation, and I definitely didn't want to mess it up. If I like messed up, I was going to go to jail for like 50 years or something like that with these felonies. I know, it's overkill, right? That's what I thought at the time too. Some guy was like, ugh. I was like, yeah, I thought it was overkill. But anyway, I didn't want to mess that up, so I was like, I'll do this for 3 years. I know how to be a good little girl and look good on paper, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get that paper signed. I did commit to really do the program, but I was like, I'll do it for this amount of time, and then I'll like go about my life, you know? So I went to meetings, I got a sponsor. I chose my sponsor because she had like an emo outfit on, you know, like, don't recommend choosing your sponsor for that, but it didn't matter, it worked. Like, we met every week, we worked on the steps. Later on, she ended up relapsing and admitting, like, I kept telling my sponsors to pray and do all this stuff. I didn't do any of that stuff. She was like, I never prayed a day in my life. And that was where I learned, like, it doesn't matter, like, the person is not the message or the program is a program. So like this woman who was like not even bought in to the program was able to walk me through the steps, and I stayed sober. She didn't, but like the program works, you know, even if the people who are in it like aren't working yet. So anyway, we met every week. I got a home group up in Marietta. It was a young adult group. So I was 19 at the time. And like in rehab, in the adult program, I was like one of the youngest people. Young adult, one of the youngest people there. And then my home group, I was one of the youngest people there. And so I did have to grapple with all the stuff of like, my whole life, like, you know, like, what am I gonna do at my wedding is something I asked myself as a 19-year-old, like, 4-time felon, you know, like, zero prospects, but these were the worries that I was having. And I really had to get with, like, what does it mean to do this one day at a time? And I was also worried, like, what if I mess this up and go to jail? Like, all this stuff that could have gotten in my way of just, like, doing the next right thing. I will say, when I had about, I don't care, I'm gonna skip over some stuff, like, I continue to be of service. Something in my talk that I often say is, like, service is the #1 thing for me. It has guided me and kept me in the middle of the boat in this program the entire time. One way that looked when I was young was that I got involved with, like, young people conferences, and I took service positions on those conferences, which made me have to show up at these conferences every year and be on phone calls that were so annoying. It taught me how to be of service to the service structure and how much, like, each of us are responsible for making sure that AA continues to be a thing that people can come to. Like, I feel a very personal responsibility for that. I hope everyone in here does too, because if we all didn't have that, then it wouldn't exist, right? But it also, like, that commitment also helped me. So one example that I always say is, like, one of those conferences was in New York. I moved a lot in my sobriety too, so I have experience with that. If you're moving, I can talk to you about that. But I went to this conference in New York and I sat down. I was moving to Houston and there was a Houston bid for this conference. And I sat down and I was like, you guys, I'm moving to Houston in 2 weeks. Give me all of your numbers and, like, help me get plugged in. And when I landed there, I called these numbers and a person would be like, I'm going to this meeting. And I'll be like, I'll be there. What meeting are you going to tomorrow? I'll be there. What meeting are you going to tomorrow? I'll be there. So it's like I took this service position to, like, give back to this conference that really helped me, like, learn how to be, like, a fun young person again. But then also it allowed me to have access to this fellowship in this community that really saved my life. And I've done that every time I've moved. I haven't told my story since pre-pandemic, and a lot has happened in my sobriety in my life since then. I'm sorry if the pandemic was, like, really hard for you, especially from an AA perspective, but I loved pandemic AA. Like, I was, like, pregnant when the pandemic hit, so I got to stay home my last trimester with my husband, and we had our little routine, and I was in Austin at the time, and not loving making my way into the Austin Fellowship, really, like, whatever, Austin's great or whatever. I just didn't love the fellowship. I like the Houston Fellowship, I like Atlanta Fellowship, but I was having a hard time, and then the pandemic hit, and I got to go to this meeting, which I had been a part of the last time I was in Georgia, and I got to go to my Houston ladies meeting or whatever. I just, like, adored it. And then I had my baby, and Julia and Pete would, like, look at the baby on the screen and be like, oh, she's so cute or whatever. I don't even know if they could see her, but they did the right thing and said how adorable she was, you know? And I just felt like such a sense of belonging, which what AA has given me. Like, that girl who was drinking that gin by herself to, like, stave off the loneliness. I have found that AA has helped me, like, actually have a sense of belonging instead of just staving off the loneliness. Now, it was uncomfortable, very uncomfortable to get there. Like, I had to override a bunch of ego, like, I don't want to do this. I say that my early sobriety particularly, but even, like, when I've had to move, like, I never want to do it. It's not comfortable, but, like, AA has given me the tools to manage navigating that discomfort. A feature of the last, like, I'd say 5 years, and this coincides basically with having children too, which after I had my second kid a couple years ago, I said to my husband, like, there is a spiritual leveling up that needs to happen, like, right now, because I was resentful and tired and just, like, overwhelmed with all this abundant stuff that AA had given me, like this fabulous job, all these wonderful friends, 2 beautiful children, and I was just, like, tired and resentful. And so I had to, like, rework my spiritual practice. I had to, like, rework my prayer life, recommit to sponsees, which I've always had sponsees in the fellowship. If you don't have a sponsee, I would say, like, actively go out and get one by saying, like, hey, you're new? I'm Lauren. Like, that's the kind of person I am. It's so annoying. I know it's annoying. Like, I think about what my 19-year-old self would think about me now, talking about, like, reworking my spiritual program. And I imagine she would be like, go kill yourself. Like, I'll kill myself now so you don't become that person. But, like, I So I've been thinking about that a lot because I had a friend who was struggling recently, and I was the person who said, like, where do you think God is in this? Like, what an annoying thing to say, but that's like, that helps me get through life when it is especially devastating, which life tends to be sometimes. And I don't know like how else, I don't know what another solution for that is, except like an alcoholic death. Like, life is devastating sometimes. I can choose this way of like, higher power, community here. I think that my higher power speaks through the people around me, or I can like stave it away with alcohol until alcohol kills me. And I do think that alcohol will kill me. I don't know if you think that your alcoholism will kill you, but I do believe that it will kill me. I think Mike and I, my sponsor, like probably say that out loud to each other at least once a week, like it kills people. And that's not like the way I want to go. So I'm not willing to have that. I'm gonna stop because I want to give time for all the celebrants. I want to annoyingly say, like, I don't think of myself as a joiner. Like, I don't join things, I don't want to join stuff, but I have so enthusiastically joined AA, meaning like if someone's like, I don't know, I'm like, no, you should go. Not enthusiastically when it's like 7:45 and I'd really like to get my pajamas on and go to bed. I don't feel very enthusiastic then, but I do it anyway, and I get the results of that. I'm gonna read related to that one thing that I like to end my stories on. This is in Dr. Bob's Nightmare, which is my favorite story at the back of the book. I like this section because it sums up my relationship with AA and my life as a result. It is a most wonderful blessing to be relieved of the terrible curse with which I was afflicted. My health is good. I've regained my self-respect and the respect of my colleagues. My home life is ideal and my business is as good as can be expected in these uncertain times. I spend a great deal of time passing on what I learned to others who want and need it badly. I do it for 4 reasons. A sense of duty. It is a pleasure, because in doing so I am paying my debt to the man who took time to pass it on to me. I don't know why that's making me cry. And here's the real reason. Because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. Like, I've never had it in my sobriety where I've like felt like, I think I'm gonna drink. That's not happened to me once in almost 20 years of sobriety. Like, and I think it's because I've like stayed 2 solid feet, like sat my ass all the way down in the middle of the boat of AA. And I trust that it's gonna work because people who've been here a long time said that it would. They seem wise, and so far that's been my experience. So for people who are like, I don't think it's gonna work for you, blah, 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 I'm like, yeah, probably not. Like, you kind of have to like blind faith go into that it is gonna work and give yourself fully to it, and I swear that it will, right? So anyway, I love this home group. Thank you so much for your sobriety celebrants, and with that I'll pass.